now talk about all things justice and policing with Mike Neville, former Met Police detective, a voice of common sense in this crazy world. Hi there, Mike. Right, I want to talk first of all about what Justice Minister Shabana Mahmood said, definitely not under my watch, it's not going to happen, which is this idea that probation officers have to consider the trauma of ethnic minority criminals before they are sentenced. And she said this would be two-tier, the law should be colourblind, this is absolutely not happening. But the UK government is now reviewing these bail guidelines introduced by the Ministry of Justice after saying that the rules were unfairly introduced. But her department, from everything coming out of the Ministry of Justice, seems to want to push ahead with it. I mean, this must, as a man who sort of, you know, was on the beat and you actually see the reality of who's committing crimes and why and what sort of crimes they're committing, this sort of stuff must make you sick to the back of your teeth.
It does make me sick to the back of my teeth. And in Britain, we've always said that justice is blind. You know, the statue of justice is often the goddess who is blindfolded, so you can't see skin colour, sex or sexuality or anything like that. And it's just a vile situation in it where people can claim that there's some sort of, because of slavery 200 years ago, you know, I should get bail out of court. Well, my great-great-grandmother was put in service like a slave at 8 years old. So should I get some kind of extra cards to play when I'm arrested or whatever else? And it simply cannot carry on. All the time they seem to be trying to fiddle the figures to show that certain people are more innocent than others. And this is just not good enough for Britain. It's just very, very bad. You know, it can't carry on, Alex.
No, I agree. And actually, if we start going down this route and put these things into law, we are in deep, deep trouble, because we'd end up having, because once things are on a statute book or sort of put into guidelines, judges and probation officers just have to follow them blindly, a bit like Sir Keir Starmer does. Oh, I've got clarity now because something's in law. But what would happen is you'd have rape gangs and people in county lines all going, yeah, I've done all this atrocious stuff, but it's because of my skin colour. Oh, sorry. I mean, it's abominable. I want to talk to you as well about this story, because this is really interesting, right? It's police officers who fail background checks will be automatically sacked. That's a new law that's been introduced by Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, requiring all serving police officers in England and Wales to pass mandatory background checks. If they fail these vetting processes, they'll be automatically dismissed. Now, there have been a number of high-profile cases of police officers with troubling histories. Wayne Couzens, of course, David Carrick. And so there was, you know, rightfully so, a lot of upset and concern about whether certain people in the police force could be trusted. But my concern, I don't know what this vetting procedure fully involves. And my concern, I suppose, is that it doesn't go so far that someone who might have just, you know, committed a tiny peccadillo in their youth and actually as a character who'd make a great police officer finds himself booted out of a job. I mean, do you welcome this? Do you think this is exactly what should have happened, or are there any concerns?
Yeah, so I've got concerns. So really there's two issues here, Alex. One, you're talking about people who are joining the police. So the vetting takes place before you join the police, and that enables you to join. Really, these rules are concerned with people who are already in the police, people like Wayne Couzens and David Carrick. One of the officers who was involved in a recent High Court case was where he'd been accused of various sexual matters. None of these have been proved. None of them had ever really resulted in disciplinary. And the rules almost is there's no smoke without fire, and you could get booted out. And what the High Court rule was, you're entitled to some sort of fair hearing, a fair trial. And we do not want bad people in the police, but we live in a society where you have to be found guilty. You can't just have this, as I said, no smoke without fire. And my concern is if you're a very good detective and you were attacking an organised crime group, that they could arrange for people to make various accusations against you, that you'd committed some sexual crimes. These cases were never proven, but over a number of years, it's like, oh, look at all this all added together, and you get the boot. And so it's got to be really careful about that. And what strikes me all the time, of course, is the MPs who bring this in. Would the MPs have this for themselves? Right. Would MPs allow themselves to be vetted like this? Because I tell you now that a lot of MPs would be booted out if they applied the same rules. So if they want to apply these rules to police officers, let them apply them to themselves.
Yeah, I think it's about making sure that wrongs of the past are righted, but not doing an overcorrection. Apparently tasers are now going to be trialled in prisons. This follows the attack from the brother of the Manchester Arena bomber on prison officers at HMS Frankland in County Durham. There have been recent reports as well about Muslim gangs basically running prisons, and people who aren't in the Muslim gangs having to be put into segregation. I mean, how bad are the insides of our prisons, Mike?
Well, it's nothing like Porridge. You know, people imagine it's like, you know, the comedy series Porridge with Ronnie Barker. It's nothing like that. But I tell you, a simple solution to a lot of this, Alex, is to start doing what they did in Porridge, having people like Mr. Mackay, who's got his army medals on his chest. There should be no women in men's prisons, and the other way around. But the real problem is that you have a lot of violent and wicked men in prison, and what you don't need is a lot of 25-year-old girls. We know why there's different sports in the Olympics, men and women. Men are bigger and stronger than women, and let's get back to common sense. We need men, ex-armed forces in our prisons ruling, you know, getting a grip. We can't carry on like this. So you can have as many tasers as you want, but if you've got 3 or 4 burly blokes, they can take out one burly bloke. I'm afraid 3 girls can't take out 1 burly bloke. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
have a taser.
I agree. It's amazing, actually. I'm glad you brought up that topic, because I totally think it's unsuitable. You know, violent men, you shouldn't have women anywhere near them. But one thing that I've noticed, I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, is this huge uptick in female prison officers having flings with the inmates. And I keep seeing story after story, and every time you see, you know, the prison officer looks like some sort of pouting OnlyFans model. And you just think, how on earth is that a thing? I think you could go through all the psychology of women being attracted to a bad boy and this, that and the other. But it's so unsuitable when men are being put away for the detention in an all-male environment to have a woman strutting about like she wants to be a page 3 model.
It's absolutely crazy. I was speaking to a former prison officer, colleague, friend of mine, and he said when he first joined, they brought this in, and it was all to do with equal opportunities. The reason for prison is to punish and lock away offenders and perhaps to rehabilitate them. Its role is not to provide equal opportunities. But the trouble is that men are bad. 95% of prisoners are men. And so what they said is, we've got to let women have a go, and they've got to have a turn in the men's prison. But of course, men are, as we've described, wicked and evil. And these villains are also very manipulative. And you've got these young girls, and what you said, Alex, there is this attraction to bad boys and all this sort of thing. So let's just get rid of it. There's a simple way to sort this out. Women in women's prison, men in men's prisons. That's the end of it. Finished.
Right, and I think making sure that there's that sort of track to employment for veterans is a brilliant idea, can I just say, Mike? Now, finally, before I let you go, another report has revealed the shocking decline of HMP Park in Bridgend, once considered one of Britain's best prisons. It has been now plagued by drugs and violence. There's been the deaths of 17 inmates in 2023. Drugs are just being flown in with drones. So it used to be a completely privately managed prison. And full disclosure, when I was a reporter at the BBC, I actually went to visit it, and it was quite an incredible institution. They had a workshop, and there were sort of offenders working on all sorts of brilliant carpentry. It was modern. Now it seems like just some sort of screaming hellhole, like an all-round spiced-up party. I mean, why has everything declined to this level? And one assumes that if you've got people just, you know, hanging around in prison, getting themselves off on illegal drugs to the point that they're dying, that this isn't exactly a rehabilitation exercise.
It's crazy. I mean, I read about the prison. One of the things, you can open your window. Well, do you know what? If you can open your window, somebody can fly drugs to the window in a drone. It's absolute craziness. Why are these things? Why is common sense missing? Why are the common sense, men in a men's prison, women in a women's prison, common sense in a prison, you can't open the window? Where has all this gone? We just seemingly, as a country, we seem to have gone quite mad, really. And again, in that prison, the nurse had an affair with one of the inmates. It's just, let's get back to Porridge. Let's have Mr. Mackay running our prisons again. And a lot of these problems would should never occur in the first place. Bad management. I bet you the management of that prison have been more interested in equal opportunities and diversity policies rather than locking up the prisoners securely. The lack of focus on this, it's in the police, it's all over the place, is what's wrong with this country. Do what you're supposed to do.
Well, there you go. I couldn't have put it better myself. Mike Neville, thank you ever so much.